We're inside a giant tank that's usually filled to the brim with water, but right now they're doing maintenance, so they've drained the water and we can capture shots like these. Creating a place like this takes years, and its construction involves builders, researchers, and scientists from several countries. The cost of such a project runs into millions of dollars, and to achieve the result, people are even ready to hollow out an entire mountain. The mountain we're talking about is called Nijugo, and it's located in the city of Hida. That's in Gifu Prefecture in Japan. Hida is a small city with a population of just under 25,000 people. The city's economy primarily relies on sake brewing and traditional Japanese candles, plus they make mitarashi, which are rice balls on a stick. And it was in this city that the Japanese decided to dig out a huge mountain and create an incredibly massive artificial cave inside it, the biggest of its kind. Humanity has never seen a project of this scale, a gigantic cave 2,000 feet underground. To carry out the project, 560 researchers from 101 institutions in 21 countries were needed, and $600 million. It all began with digging a tunnel to the center of the mountain. That makes sense. To make a cavity inside the mountain with a reservoir, you'd need to get in first, and also check out what's going on there. And so in 2020, with the help of a newly built 315-foot-long tunnel and a borehole 2,379 feet deep, extensive research was carried out to thoroughly study the state of the rock. Apparently, everyone was happy with the results, and the construction continued. Around the entrance to the tunnel, a yard was built, an electrical distribution system, as well as a water supply and drainage system. The digging of the access tunnel to the main underground cavity started in May 2021. It took approximately 9 months just to dig the main passage, which is 1.2 miles long. By June 2022, the tunnel had reached the center of the dome of the future tank. But the tunnel digging didn't end there. They still needed to create a bypass that would surround the main cave and be used for installing equipment and other work. The tunnel was dug, and then came the turn of the cave. Its construction began in November 2022. This was the key stage of the building process. Essentially, the whole project was started just for this cave. The dome section was dug out in the shape of a snail shell, and anchors were built into the ceiling to expand the space and ensure the stability of the rock. In the end, it's not just a room, it has a specific purpose. But we'll get to that later. Right now, while you're watching the video, construction's still ongoing, and the final diameter of the dome section is supposed to be 226 feet. The whole mountain is supported by over 600 anchors because the structure has to handle the pressure of a 2,000-foot mountain on top and keep a stable space. And if it all works out, it'll be the largest artificial underground cavity in the world. By the way, the original plan was to dig out space for a reservoir using explosives. Just imagine how skilled the demolition experts would need to be to pull off something like that. Blowing up something under a mountain, with tunnels already dug around, and it could all collapse. But let's get back to our cave. In the end, the main underground chamber is basically a cylinder with a diameter of 226 feet and a height of 240 feet, and a dome-shaped support that's 69 feet high. Or to put it simply, it's just huge. It's planned that the excavation for the cylindrical part of the water tank will continue throughout 2024, and then the tank will need cladding. They have scheduled it for 2025. So, in total, 260,000 tons of water will be poured into the cylindrical tank, and as you might imagine, filling such a tank is a not-so-simple task. In 1996, when Japan completed the construction of the younger brother of this project, it took 2 months to fill a 55-ton tank, and here we have a volume 5,000 times bigger. But let's say modern technology will allow getting it done faster. However, after filling it up, it'll take several more months before the water is purified to the right state, because you can't just drink it, it needs to have a special quality. The shots you're seeing were filmed inside the little brother of the tank under construction, and it also holds ultra-pure water. The cleanest water on the planet with so few impurities turns caustic, because nobody spends millions of dollars just to excavate a huge pool inside a mountain and then, let tourists in? No, it's way more interesting, including the water. Give it enough time, such pure water can dissolve metal. Scientists discovered this when they dropped a hammer into the tank. I wonder whether this was done on purpose or someone just accidentally dropped it. Anyway, after years, they took out the hammer. Inside, it was hollow. only the chrome-plated shell of the tool remained. And I also want to point out the mountain, because the construction site was chosen for a reason. When you're building something inside a mountain and you're not a dwarf from Duran's line, there's always a risk of very serious problems, even with dome expansion. Because one mistake, a minor crack in safety, and that's it. Hundreds of people could be buried under the mountain with no chance to be rescued. And this mountain was chosen specifically for safety reasons. The reason is that it's known as Hida gneiss, one of the most solid rock formations in Japan. This rock type formed under immense pressure way back in ancient times and should be able to endure all the work done inside. Well, and there are also abundant supplies of fresh water nearby. So let's get back to the structure itself. I've already mentioned that it's gigantic, talked about its height, diameter, and all that, but I know from experience that it's hard to imagine such scales. So let's use some references. Our underground cylinder has a height of 240 feet. That's roughly the height of a 23-story building, which is a lot. For example, let's take Tokyo Dome, a massive structure, a covered stadium in Tokyo with an internal height of 184 feet. So if you put the dugout cylinder inside the stadium, it'll go through the ceiling. And besides the height, there's also the impressive width. The diameter of the cavity is 223 to 226 feet, which is like the width of a soccer field. Well, if we keep it really simple, the Statue of Liberty will fit comfortably inside our cylinder. But without the pedestal? With the pedestal, it would stick out by 66 feet. So the big question is, why did they do that in the first place? What exactly are they planning to study? And why did it require digging out the inside of a mountain? The answer lies in a word you might have heard: neutrino. Do you know what that is? Imagine an ancient particle zooming through space after a star explodes. This particle has been speeding through space for billions of years, coming from a massive supernova, 8 times bigger than our sun. The particle is called a neutrino, or little neutron in Italian, a very small one. Neutrinos are one of the most mysterious particles in nature, able to pass through objects as if they don't exist. Neutrinos are even called ghost particles because they barely interact with anything, yet they're the most common particles in the universe after light, so they're everywhere. But we know damn little about them. Approximately 100 trillion neutrinos every second pass through your body completely harmlessly. And mine too. And actually through all sorts of objects. A lot of neutrinos come to Earth from the sun and stars. Neutrinos are also produced when cosmic rays collide with Earth's atmosphere. Even bananas emit neutrinos. Also, neutrinos are incredibly small and don't interact with electromagnetic force. To put it in perspective, incredibly means they are smaller than atoms. However, in very, very rare instances, neutrinos can release charged particles when they hit matter on their path. When this happens, we observe a faint ring-like Cherenkov radiation. That is unusual glowing, but even with this radiation in mind, neutrinos are very hard to study. They're 100,000 times smaller than electrons, and so particles are incredibly difficult to detect even with the most modern equipment. Neutrinos were first discovered around 2000, and since then there's been a lot of effort to study them. But as we learn more questions keep popping up. It's obvious that they're key in particle physics, stellar physics, black holes, and the universe, but if we can really study neutrinos, scientists might also be able to investigate our own beginnings. This is precisely why the work is underway in the mountain. Hyper Kamiokande, which is the reason all this effort is made, will be the largest underground neutrino detector globally, and will look for proton decay. This will be a gigantic water-filled tank lined with sensors that'll catch flashes occurring when neutrinos collide with electrons or atomic nuclei in the water, especially pure water, remember? It's needed to increase the number of interactions between neutrinos and, with everything else. Protons, neutrons, electrons. I won't go into details, it's all pretty complicated and very scientific. But those light bulbs you see on the walls are actually photomultiplier tubes. And despite their appearance, they don't emit light but serve as eyes. Yes, it's a wall with an incredible number of eyes. Eerie. However, the job of the bulbs is to notice flashes of light that are invisible to the human eye. They are so sensitive that they can detect the light from a flashlight on the surface of the moon. In total, they plan to place 40,000 ultra-sensitive optical sensors there to, solve the mysteries of the universe. And bring Japan another Nobel Prize in physics in this field. Nothing too complicated. They plan to start collecting data in 2027. How about the little brother of the huge reservoir? Under the mountain in central Japan, there's already a similar experiment that cost $140 million. It used to be one of the largest zinc mines in Japan, and now it's one of the most successful scientific experiments. This, by the way, is a second-generation detector. The first one spurred rapid development in neutrino research worldwide. The second one revealed neutrino properties one after another. It's no wonder that a lot of hopes are pinned on the third detector. Science is advanced, scientists are using the experience from the first two devices, and the detector itself is bigger, meaning more water, more bulbs. Basically, it should be even better than before. Given that both previous experiments led to Nobel Prizes in physics, the expectations among scientists are high. By the way, why do they build all this stuff underground? First a mine, then a mountain. Can't they just find some field and put up a huge warehouse there? It's possible, but the research results will be very questionable. The Japanese place their detectors deep underground to minimize the interference coming from other particles. Besides neutrinos, there are other elementary particles, a total of 17. Most of these particles lose energy in the soil and stop, but neutrinos can pass through anything. That's why detectors are placed underground or in a mountain. This way, scientists will know for sure that the detected particles are neutrinos. But scraping out the inside of a mountain isn't the first construction marvel people have done to study these particles. Imagine, a neutrino travels 750 million light years and ends up buried underneath Antarctic ice. Why? Because Ice Cube is here. No, not the rapper. It's the Neutrino Observatory at the South Pole. It's a particle detector made from Antarctic ice. And why not use ice when there's plenty of it around? The detector is located not far from the Amundsen Scott Station, just buried deep underground, about 8,200 feet down. Of course, there's no need of using water here. We have ice here instead. Essentially, it's billions of tons of ice embedded with a grid of sensors. They light up when they detect a passing neutrino, and by looking at where they're located, scientists can determine the energy and direction of the neutrino that caused the burst. With this information, they can attempt to uncover the origins of neutrinos in the universe. This detector is also set for an upgrade, but that won't be completed until the 2030s. Detector versus earthquake. As already mentioned, one of the detectors is inside a mountain in Japan, one of the most seismically active countries. Each year, around 1,500 earthquakes occur in the country. Isn't there a risk that one of them might be strong enough to bring down everything that's been built up for so long? So one time an earthquake really damaged the equipment, broke 60% of the photo multiplier tubes in the old detector, and they had to pause the research for a while to fix it. But they promised to take this into account when building the new detector. Sunny Italia. Did you know that a similar detector was set up deep under a mountain in Italy? Smaller, of course. The device, called Borexino, consists of a tank about 59 feet high, which contains 254 tons of scintillating liquid. And it was right here that, for the first time in the history of physics, rare, ghostly particles were discovered that are formed as a result of nuclear fusion inside the sun. These are also neutrinos, but special ones, solar ones. Such a discovery brings humanity one step closer to understanding the fiery nuclear reactions that power our home star. A snapshot from inside the sun. Our star keeps smashing atoms together deep inside to create its blazing light. But because this internal chaos is buried under thick outer layers of the sun, scientists have few ways to find out what's actually happening. But neutrinos can shoot straight out from the center of the sun. And it's with their help that researchers got one of the most detailed pictures of the sun's mysterious inner world ever made. By the way, they created this picture using Borexino. The first map of the Milky Way. Don't think that achievements belong only to Borexino. Not long ago, scientists tracked the galactic origin of 60,000 neutrinos with Ice Cube and created the first ever portrait of the Milky Way. And it's a completely new image because all the pictures we got before were taken using visible light. In the case of neutrinos, it's a map made of matter. Hunting on the bottom. Neutrinos are everywhere, even in the largest freshwater lake in the world. It was there, in Lake Baikal, that Russian researchers submerged the world's biggest underwater detector. The spherical device, named Baikal Gigaton, is designed to detect and observe elusive neutrinos. But why this lake? It's simple. The location of the lake and the seasonal ice cover, which lasts for 2 months, make it a perfect place to detect neutrinos. In fact, Baikal is the only lake where you can place a neutrino detector because only here it's deep enough. Areas rich in water and ice like lakes and glaciers are the best places to detect neutrinos. Anyway, you already realized the more water the better. You owe me a like. See you later.